this video, I will be playing the entire career of a 5-star quarterback. But the catch with this is that his entire career would be controlled by this wheel. Now let me explain. Following the completion of a season, our quarterback, Warren Wallace, will be spinning a wheel to decide which team he plays for in the following season. But things wouldn't be that simple, as at the beginning of each season, he would be spinning the wheel of challenges. This wheel would give him a goal for the next season. If Warren completes his goal, he'll be able to spin a wheel with the top 25 teams on it to join the very next season. Trust me, this all makes sense after we get through a year. After using a wheel to decide where Wallace's home state was, he would go on to dominate high school, winning a state championship in Texas. These were his stats in his final high school year, which led to these teams being on his recruiting board. And now is the time for the first crucial wheel spin of the video. This first spin would decide where we would be playing in our freshman season, and this could be the deciding factor for how the rest of our career goes, and it looks like we're going to be joining the military. After going to the bottom of my board and finally committing to Army, it was time to finally spin the wheel of challenges to decide what I needed to complete during my freshman year. Luckily, I narrowly avoided the 4,000 plus passing yards goal, and now I would need to get less than 10 interceptions. Starting off in our freshman year, we were looking at a good 86 overall, but with the way that this roster looks, I knew that it was going to be difficult to win games with this team. Luckily for me, there's a receiver on the team with 98 speed and 96 acceleration in Seth Jacobs, and going into our first game against an FCS school, we were sitting at a 75 overall. Now, with me getting incredibly lucky on the wheel of challenges due to Army being a mainly run-heavy dominant school, I was feeling very confident that we were going to be able to complete our goal of less than 10 interceptions this season. We were starting off by getting Seth Jacobs on the left side, and he was able to show off his speed earlier in this game. We were up by multiple possessions early in the second quarter, and I decided to roll out to the right side, and I decided to make a terrible read, leading to my first interception of the season. That would mean that I would only be able to throw 8 interceptions the rest of this year if I wanted to be on a good team going into the next season. But other than that interception, we would go on to a dominating win against an FCF school. Game number 2 would be against Buffalo, and this game would be rough as our offense had 0 points going into the fourth quarter. We'd be down by 6 points with our offense seemingly doing nothing all game, and I had to use my legs because my receivers were not good enough to get open majority of the game, and we were able to get a big scramble. And on a crucial 4th down conversion, we would end up rolling out to the right side, and we would extend the play, leading to Seth Jacobs getting a score. That would lead to us being up by 1 point, but our defense would let Buffalo go all the way down the field, kicking a field goal with barely any time left in the game, meaning that we would go on to lose by 2 points. We're looking to get back in the win column against South Carolina the very next week, and looking to get off to a hot start. Unlike last game, we decided to throw it up early on, taking a huge risk which didn't pay off as we threw our second interception of the season. And just like that, we were down by 7 points early on in the first quarter, but we got a big play on first down here. With players like Seth Jacobs in the game, I wanted to pass every single play and throw it up to him, which I did here, which actually ended up working out. And late in the second quarter, we were able to take the lead with another touchdown to him. We'd find ourselves down by 5 late in the fourth with our defense playing pretty atrociously, but luckily Seth Jacobs was on this team, and he seemed like he was our only offense that we had all game. That score wouldn't matter though, as the Gamecocks got all the way down the field and would end up getting a touchdown right here. So with only 7 seconds left in the game, we had to get a touchdown if we wanted to win this game. We were able to find Samuel for a big play on first down, and with 1 second left in the game and time expiring, we had nothing left to do except roll out to the right side and throw up the ball, and luckily our receiver Samuel came down with it. That led to a huge victory and what was a close 3-point game that got us back in the win column. We were away yet again, playing against Arkansas State in our next game, and we were looking to ride the high off of our last game, but in the fourth quarter we were down by 3 possessions as we had 0 points going into it. On second and goal, we finally got all the way down the field and would find Seth Jacobs over the middle, but our defense would give up another score, meaning that our scramble to the left side would only be for stats. And with 6 seconds left in the game, we were looking to make another big play, but we ended up throwing our 3rd interception of the season in what was a crushing 10-point loss to the Red Wolves. All State was next on the agenda for us, and I was just glad to be back home where I felt more comfortable playing, as we had a terrible game last week and we were looking to get Seth Jacobs off to an early start. Luckily, that play would lead to us going all the way down the field, punching it in with our fullback, and going into the fourth quarter, we had an 18-point lead. On the very first play of the fourth, we were driving all the way down the field, and I was able to roll out to the right side, extending our lead, and from there, we'd go on to have a dominating victory in a game where we scored 28 points while only giving up 3. We were back home, thankfully, against Rice the next week, and like always, we were getting Seth Jacobs involved early in this game. Our offense was killing most of the clock at the first quarter, which led to us getting a score early on in the second with this scramble, but after simulating a couple plays, our quarterback threw an interception. This was not good, as we were only 6 games into the season, and we had 4 interceptions already, and we only had been playing terrible schools up until this point, so I knew that throughout the rest of the season I'd have to play extremely cautious, as I was only able to throw 5 more interceptions. Luckily for us, we would get another win, and what was a 7-point victory over an undefeated Rice team. This is what the stats looked like halfway through the season, and as I mentioned, we had 4 interceptions already, and we were looking to limit turnovers against Kent State. Our offense had been playing extremely poor the entire game, as we only had 7 points with 10 seconds left in the third quarter, and Seth Jacobs dropped this wide open touchdown. But opening up the fourth quarter, we were looking to drive down the field, and on this 3rd down conversion, I was able to slip away from defenders, getting close to the end zone by getting to the 4-yard line. 2 plays later, Seth Jacobs would actually catch the ball, this time getting a score, and after our defense got a stop and we moved the ball mostly down the field, there was only a minute and a half left in the game, and I was able to scramble out to the right side, getting a lead for the first time. And on 4th and 6, as long as Kent State didn't pick this up, we would win the game, which we ended up doing, in a game where the scoreboard looked better than how we actually played. Our first military opponent was up next in Air Force, and with the team that we had going into our freshman season, it was a miracle that we were sitting at a 5-2 record, but I think Seth Jacobs was a large part of that, as he was integral to every part of our game. Every single week, Seth Jacobs would prove his worth, and he was able to do it on the very next possession yet again by outrunning every single defender on his way to another score. Even though it looked like we were passing the ball quite often, we would run the ball a lot, we just wouldn't get much yard. Luckily on this this triple option we ran it perfectly, leading to a Tyrell Robinson touchdown. And that would lead to a dominating victory over a military opponent. We had one of our tougher games of the season against Wake Forest in the next game. We would find ourselves up by 1, and even though Wake Forest's record was 4-5, they were still a really good team on paper. And going into the fourth quarter down by 6, my quarterback had his 5th interception of the season. We had tons of time to come back in this game with us only being down by less than a touchdown, and I was able to use my legs on first down to roll out to the left side, and I was getting all the way down the field into the red zone, but I ended up fumbling the ball, giving it back to the Demon Deacons, and we wouldn't get the ball back as they would score from there, winning by 14. We're looking to bounce back next week in a rainy game against Western Kentucky, but on the second play in the second quarter, we found ourselves down by multiple possessions to Western Kentucky until I threw it up to Seth Jacobs on the left side, and he was able to do what he's been doing every single game. In the middle of the second quarter on our next drive, we were able to tie up the game with this scramble, but going into the fourth quarter, we were down by 11 points. Our defense had been good throughout the majority of this season, but the last couple games they've been giving up a ton of points, so even when our offense was hitting on all cylinders, it wouldn't matter as we'd be outscored, and down by 10 in the fourth quarter, I would end up throwing my 6th interception of the season. That would lead to us losing consecutive games as we had a 10-point loss to Western Kentucky. We'd be traveling to sunny California for Stanford in our next game, and this game had been one of the worst games that I had ever played in, as in the fourth quarter, each team was tied at 0 apiece. With close to 2 minutes left in the quarter, we knew that we needed to get points on the board, and on 3rd and 22, I was looking to get a big scramble just to get into field goal range, which I was able to do, barely getting into the red zone, which gave our kicker the opportunity to finally get some points on the board. That wouldn't matter as with 50 seconds left in the game, Stanford would answer back, and with 20 seconds left, I was trying to make a play, so I ended up throwing it up to our big player in Seth Jacobs, but it was underthrown, leading to our 7th interception. That would lead to us going into overtime at 3 apiece. The fans were extremely excited to see a 3-3 game go to overtime, and I would end up on 3rd down rolling out to the left side, and on the very next play after that, I ended up throwing it over the linebacker's head to get a touchdown. Our defense would get a stop on the very next possession, and we would end up winning an exhilarating 10-3 game. After clinching a winning record, it was finally time to show off the goal list, and throughout the next several seasons, if Warren Wallace wanted to be drafted, he would have to complete every one of these goals in order to do so, and we'd be going into our last game of the season against our rival Navy. On paper, Navy was not a good team, and we were looking to extend our lead, which we were able to do by multiple possessions, but late in the fourth quarter, we only found ourselves up by 3 points. After sitting back in the pocket and making a great throw, we were able to get a huge play, and we ended up running the ball all the way down the field, and we were able to kill out the rest of the clock, and I was able to use my legs and break a tackle, extending our lead. That touchdown only added insult to injury as we ended up winning by 10 points, and we had officially clinched a spot in the Military Bowl against Houston. But before that, looking at our stats, I only had 7 interceptions going into the last game of the season, meaning that I could still throw 2 and complete the challenge. With that being said, I still wanted to go through this game without having a single interception, leading to a great season, and somehow we made this play on 3rd down, and the Houston defensive line was storming me on every single play, leading to me having to roll out multiple times, and Seth Jacobs was able to get a huge play over the middle, extending our drive, and he would end up breaking the school season receiving yards record. Our offense had been looking good on our first drive until I decided to throw it up on the left side, leading to our 8th interception of the year, and since then, our offense and defense hadn't been playing well as we've been down by 7 points until this huge play, and after that key first down, we were able to get on the board, tying the game. Late in the third, we were able to tie the game yet again at 21, and to open up the fourth quarter, I was playing risky as I thought Seth Jacobs had a step on the left side, but he didn't, leading to our 9th interception. So instead of us having some cushion with our interception challenge, I knew that the rest of the game I couldn't throw a single one, otherwise I would fail it, but luckily Seth Jacobs was able to get a huge play, getting a 96-yard touchdown on this one here. Our defense would let Houston go right down the field and score, so with only 5 seconds left in the game, we needed to get down the field and try to get a field goal, but we were barely past midfield and our kicker wasn't that good, so the only thing we had to do was throw it up, and Seth Jacobs was thankfully able to come down with it, leading to a huge bowl game win and us completing another goal on our goal list. I would finish the season with great passing stats as I only had 9 interceptions, and after completing our challenge of not throwing 10 interceptions in a season, we were able to spin the wheel of top 25 teams, and we were going to be taking our talents to Florida. There were a lot of difficult challenges yet to be completed in this wheel, and I definitely was not looking forward to getting 1,000 plus rushing yards. Thankfully for me though, I was sitting at a 94 overall record with 82 speed, and this team was looking a lot better than Army. Our team was a 91 overall with a 95 defense, but being a quarterback, I wasn't looking forward to completing the challenge of 1,000 rushing yards as I would have to focus on that every game. Late in the second quarter, we get our first touchdown of the season on the ground, but throughout this next year, sacks would be absolutely detrimental. Every time that I would get good yardage on the ground, I would end up getting sacked, leading to me losing all of that yardage, and even though I had good speed for a quarterback, the challenge would still be extremely difficult as I would have to get 1,000 rushing yards with low stamina. Late in the third quarter, after driving all the way down and reading the read option perfectly, I was able to get into the end zone, and we would go on to cruise to an easy victory over Coastal Carolina in a game where I would put up 81 rushing yards. We'd be playing the Owls and FAU in our next game, and with 12 games in the season, if I wanted to complete this challenge, I would need to get 83 rushing yards a game, but thankfully if we made a bowl game or a conference championship, that would also be included in my rushing total, and I was able to get a huge play on 2nd down, leading to our first score of the game. With me being forced to run the ball a lot more, there'd be a lot of strategy to me throwing the ball as I didn't want to do it that often, but I would need to do it on key plays, and it would be extremely difficult for me to pass up easy opportunities like this one. We'd go on to dominate the Owls in a game where I put up 85 rushing yards. I was currently exactly on pace for 1,000 yards in 12 games, and we were going up against Mizzou in the next one. This play style of rushing first was extremely frustrating throughout many games in this season as I didn't want to have to look to it, but I had to every play. But I was reminding schools that I was still one of the best quarterbacks in the nation as I could throw the ball willingly. Our offense had been struggling to put any points on the board, and after getting sacked for the third straight time, I would go into the third quarter with barely any rushing yards, and luckily I was able to get a huge play on second down, getting close to the end zone by getting to the 3-yard line. And on third and goal, we were able to give it to our star running back for a score. With 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, we were looking to extend our lead, and we were able to do just that as I found our tight end and a close 7-point victory over the Tigers. I would fall short of our average in this game, getting only 72 rushing yards, so that would mean going into our game against Tennessee, I would need to focus on it a lot more. Being in the SEC meant that I was going to be going against tough schools every single week, so I knew that it was going to be hard running the ball, but thankfully our receivers were getting open, and even though I was focused on the rushing game, I knew that I still needed to pass, but I was able to scramble in, and luckily for me, in the second quarter, we were able to find Chase Moody streaking wide open, and he was able to get a huge play for a touchdown. I was truly becoming a selfish quarterback throughout this season as I was purposely making the wrong read on triple options, as I was making sure that I tried to get rushing yards in every single play, even if I had wide open receivers or wide open players, but my selfishness would lead to a 30-point victory over a top 20 opponent in a game where I had over 110 rushing yards. I was also currently sitting at number 1 in the Heisman watch, and going into our game against Kentucky, I was very confident. Opening things in the second half, we only had 7 points on the board, but thankfully we were able to outrun a defensive lineman, getting a first down and a big play, and only one play later, we were able to find Chase Moody on the left side, and after doing a twirl, he was able to outrun every single defender on his way to a big score for a touchdown. We're looking to continue controlling the clock in the fourth quarter as we were up by 7 points after getting a first down, and as long as we were able to get a first down on this third down conversion, we were going to win, and we were able to do that. We'd go on to have a close 7-point victory in a game where I put up exactly 83 rushing yards, but we'd be traveling to Death Valley to play on LSU in our next game. So far this season, I had been keeping up with our rushing yards as I had been getting around our average that we needed to get with a couple games above 100, and I was getting a huge play here, and late in the second quarter, we were able to go up by 14. Everything would halt after that as we'd find ourselves down by 3 going into the fourth quarter, and open up the fourth, we were running the read option, and I was able to make a great read, but I ended up fumbling the ball, giving it back to them, and we wouldn't get the ball back from there as we ended up losing by 10 points, and looking at my stats halfway through the season, I was exactly on track to reach my goal by the end of the year. After winning so many games, it wasn't good coming off of a loss, but we were playing UTEP in the next one, and with me still needing to get rushing yards, I was going to be looking to do that a lot in this one as we were playing a lesser opponent, and I was able to get a huge scramble on first down, and later on that drive, we were able to roll to the right side and finding Noah Kidder, and he was able to squeak through 2 defenders getting a score. Stamina was a huge part of this challenge, and every single time that I would get a first down conversion, my guy would normally be tired right after the fact, and that would lead to me playing a chess match against my stamina every single game as it would really make things a lot more difficult. Luckily, my stamina was able to last throughout the majority of this game as I was able to scramble in with 30 seconds left, adding to our lead, and it was a good 17-point victory in a game where I had over 100 rushing yards. This would be our biggest game of the season as we were playing Georgia, and if we wanted any chance at playing in the SEC championship, we would need to win this game right here, and thankfully we were able to answer back after Georgia got on the board first. With us having 1 loss in the season and Georgia being undefeated, our only chance of making the conference championship was winning this game, and so far our defense had been struggling, but our offense was trying to keep up with Georgia's offense, so thankfully we were able to trick them on the read option, leading to me getting a touchdown. Our defense would get a stop, so we were able to get the ball back with 40 seconds, and then they had a break in their coverage as they had a receiver wide open, and our running back was able to punch it in at the end of that drive. We would open up the second half getting the ball first, which is perfect for us as we were able to get another score, and that would lead to us getting a huge victory in a game that I put up 99 rushing yards, as we would control the clock throughout the rest of the game, getting us a 5-point victory over a top 2 opponent. We would still be second in the SEC due to Georgia playing more games in the conference, and for some reason I was no longer sitting anywhere on the Heisman watch. I was confused that I wasn't on the Heisman watch, but I couldn't let that bother me going into our game against Vanderbilt, and so far in this game our offense had been struggling as we had 3 field goals on the board and no touchdowns. But look at this play right here. Teams knew what I was trying to do as they had 3 quarterback spies up so that I wouldn't run whatsoever, but luckily I was able to pass the ball, and when defenses figured out that I was trying to run the ball a lot more often, it was extremely difficult for me to get yards every game. But luckily our offense was unfazed every single game as we were able to move the ball up and down the field with ease, getting a huge touchdown, and what would be another dominating win over an SEC opponent in a game where I still managed to get 77 rushing yards. We'll be playing the Gamecocks for our second time in their career, and in the second quarter we'd be looking to extend our 10-point lead as we found Franklin on the right side and he was able to get a huge play getting past midfield. The Gamecocks adopted the strategy of Vanderbilt as they had 3 quarterback spies on this play, but it didn't matter as we got a score, and honestly from there it was an absolute blowout. In this game I still managed to get 70 rushing yards. We'll be playing against Ole Miss in our next one, and we had officially jumped Georgia for first place on our side of the conference as they had another loss. For some reason though, even though we were sitting at a 9-1 record with some big wins this season, we were only sitting at number 10th in the nation, and with only a couple games left in the year, if we wanted to make the college football playoffs, it would be extremely difficult as we didn't have a lot of games to do it. I wasn't trying to worry about that too much though as we were down by 4th in the second half, and I wasn't able to get the first down here. So in the fourth quarter we found ourselves down by 8 points looking to get a score, and I was able to throw it up to the right side finding Chase Moody, and after tying up the game we were moving down the field yet again, and Chase Moody continued to make big plays, and he was able to get close to the end zone on this one, getting within the 10. On 3rd and long later that drive I was able to find Tariq Franklin on the left side and he was able to get a touchdown. So with a minute left in the game we were tied, and I was looking to get us down the field, and I was able to find our receiver on the right side and he was able to get close to the 30-yard line, and after a couple more plays of killing the clock and getting into the red zone, we were able to kick the game-winning field goal with time expiring. That would be another huge victory for us in a game with over 100 rushing yards from me, and going into our last last game of the season, we were still sitting at 10th in the nation playing against FSU. I honestly have no idea why we haven't been moving in the polls whatsoever, but hopefully against a number 8 team, if we were to win this, we would jump up quite significantly. And with almost 2 minutes left in the second quarter, we were finally able to break the tie game of 7 apiece. We wouldn't be that far away from completing our rushing goal record, so I wouldn't be focused on running the ball too much this game. I was more focused on winning, which is exactly why we were passing the ball throughout the majority of this one, as we got another score here. We would go on to have a huge victory against a top 8 opponent, and that would lead to us going to the SEC championship against Alabama. Even after getting a huge win last week against FSU, our college football playoff hopes were not looking good, as we were only sitting at 8th in the nation, and this would be our last game of the year. I'd be extremely close to breaking my 1,000-yard rushing goal this season, and that huge play on first down would lead to me getting extremely close. And with the score tied at 7 late in the first quarter, I was able to scramble out to the right side, getting into the red zone, getting close to the 10. And as you can see right there, we had officially completed our 1,000-yard rushing goal. I was extremely excited to finally be able to focus on the game against Alabama instead of rushing, and I had no idea how frustrating it was going to be trying to get 1,000 yards rushing with a quarterback, but I should have known that the challenge was going to be difficult, but thankfully we kept scoring touchdowns, and we ended up having a huge game against Alabama, as Florida was crowned the SEC championship for the first time in a while. That would lead to me being able to knock off conference championship on my goal list, and after finishing 4th in the Heisman voting, I was able to knock off another one of my goals. Unfortunately for us, we wouldn't make the playoffs as we were playing Baylor in the All-State Sugar Bowl, and in the second half, we found ourselves down by 4 points until I was able to get a score here, and after our special teams was able to take a kick return back for a touchdown, we were up by 9 points, and I decided to throw it up to our receiver Burke on the right side, and he came down with it, and we were able to pull off what we've been doing all season and running the ball, getting another score. That would lead to a huge victory over against Baylor, and these are what my sophomore season stats looked like with me successfully getting over 1,000 rushing yards. With me completing that challenge, as you know, that would mean that I'd be able to spin the wheel of top 25 teams, and for some reason, I got lucky enough to land on Penn State, and the reason that was so lucky was because they were currently the #1 team in the nation. And if we completed every one of our goals this year, this would be the last time we were spinning this wheel, and we had to focus on getting 40+ passing touchdowns this year. Penn State was currently the reigning champions, and with me clocking in at a 99 overall, this team was looking absolutely unstoppable. This team is looking absolutely amazing at the receiving front, as Harrison Wallace at there was looking like he was going to be my #1 target this year with 95 speed. I was excited jumping into our first game against Kent State, and it was finally nice to be able to sit back and play like a true quarterback and worrying about throwing the ball first and foremost. We would get our first touchdown of the season on our first drive, and with us up by 21 points in the third quarter, we finally decided to air the top off as I threw it to Wallace on the left side, and he was able to get a score. And I truly wanted to test the capability of his receiving ability, so I threw it up to him yet again on the very next possession. He was able to come down with it and outrun every defender yet again. We'd have a dominating first win in a game that I had 7 passing touchdowns. Game 2 would see us playing against Temple, and after being up by 7 points in the first quarter, I was showing them that I was still a good running quarterback, as I was able to get a first down after juking out a defender. We would go up by multiple possessions early in the second quarter, and in the third quarter, we were able to extend our lead to 39 points. From there, we'd go on to absolutely dominate Temple in a game where I had 4 passing touchdowns. We'd be playing Southern Missouri in our next game, and I was already a quarter of the way through my challenge, but somehow this game Southern Miss had been giving us troubles as we were only up by 1 point, and I was able to throw up to the left side to Saunders, and I was showing off to NFL scouts my arm talent every single week by getting huge plays. Before we knew it, we had a huge victory against Southern Miss, where I put up 5 more touchdown passes. We were traveling to Pittsburgh for a rainy game in our next one, and on this play here, I was able to show extreme patience as I waited in the pocket for my receiver to get open, and late in the second quarter, our offense had been struggling throughout the majority of this game, so I decided to throw it up to Harrison on the left side, and he came down with it, but all of that would be for naught as I ended up throwing an interception a couple plays later. Pittsburgh had been giving us a lot of troubles, but we were able to score in the third quarter, and after our defense gave us great field position, we were able to do the exact same thing again. From there, we'd be up by multiple possessions in the fourth quarter, and of course, we threw it up to Harrison on the left side for another score, as we would end up having a great victory over Pitt. I would end up having 4 touchdowns in that one, and I was looking forward to being back home in Penn State against Indiana. We were still sitting as the #1 team in the nation 4 games into the season, as we'd been absolutely destroying every team we play up until this point. No matter who we played against, our offense just seemed like it was truly unstoppable, and that was proving here yet again as our team only gave up 3 points throughout the entirety of this game, as we ended up winning by 46 points. That game I'd end up throwing 6 more touchdown passes, and we'd be going into our first ranked game against Wisconsin. We were currently second in the Big Ten behind #2 Ohio State, but I wasn't worried about that as I knew we were going to be playing them later on in this season. Like most games, we go up by multiple possessions early on in this one, and before the end of the first half, we were only up by 8 points, and I decided to use my legs because they were fresh from me not running as much this season compared to last, and I was able to get into the red zone close to the 10, and only one play later, I found Liam Clifford on the slant route for a score. Even though we had been winning throughout the entirety of this game, Wisconsin was keeping up with us as we were only up by 8, but Harrison Wallace wanted to extend that gap, and after that big play, we were able to drive down the field and get a score. We'd go on to have a 12-point victory over Wisconsin in a game where I had 4 more passing touchdowns. Halfway through the season, we were already 75% through our goal as we had 30 passing touchdowns to only 3 interceptions. We had been looking extremely good this year, and we were looking to keep things going against the Illini. And even though I enjoyed playing with Florida, I had been having a lot more fun playing with Penn State this year as I was able to throw up the ball almost every single play, and it would work out every single time. And it was really nice not having to focus on running the ball whenever I could. Skipping to the second half, we were currently up by 42 points, and let me just tell you, this team was truly unstoppable every single game I played with them. We'd find a running back coming out of the backfield to extend our lead to 49 points, and we would go on to score 59 39 and a huge win. And in that game, I would throw 5 touchdown passes. It was now time for the most important game of the season as we were playing number 2 Ohio State, and thankfully we were home. This game would be extremely difficult because look at how good their cornerbacks were on this team, with every single one of them being a 94 plus overall. I knew going into this game that I wouldn't be able to rely on throwing it up to Harrison every single play, as the Ohio State cornerbacks were extremely quick. But after getting a field goal on our first drive, we were looking to get down the field yet again, and I was able to find my receiver on the right side. And later on that drive with goal to goal, my offensive line made some great blocks, allowing me to throw a touchdown. And Ohio State made sure that they closed the gap by getting a touchdown. After rolling out to the right side, I was able to throw back across my body to the middle of the field, but it actually worked out, and I was able to find my receiver Micah for a touchdown on the very next play. Going into halftime, we were only up by 7 points, but after getting a field goal on our opening offensive possession, our team ended up taking a kick return back, leading to us having 33 points. So with us having a multiple possession lead late in the fourth quarter, I was looking to kill out the rest of the clock after making a huge play to Wallace, and we'd have a great performance put up against the Ohio State Buckeyes. I would throw for 3 touchdowns that game, meaning that going into my game against Michigan, there would be a real chance that I'd be able to complete my goal this week. Our team had been struggling to start off games recently, which is why we were down by 10 points early on, but I was able to get a score. And for some reason, the Wolverines didn't learn from every other team's mistakes as they pressed Wallace on the left side, and he was able to go over the top, getting a huge score. And that would lead to me throwing my 40th touchdown pass, and it hasn't even been a full 9 games into the season. With us being able to complete our goal of having over 40 touchdown passes in a season, I knew that if I was able to focus on getting more passing yards, that I would be able to complete the 4,000 passing yards goal as well. Even though the challenge wheel didn't land on me getting 4,000 passing yards this season, if I was able to pull that off, I would end up completing every single challenge that I would have to do throughout my college career. And even though we absolutely dominated Michigan in the first half, we were somehow tied at 38 apiece late in the fourth quarter, but Harrison Wallace just continued to make big play after big play. He would go on to break the NCAA record for receiving yards in a game with over 462 yards. And even though we were playing up against a good, formidable opponent in Michigan, Harrison Wallace was proving to be one of the greatest receivers of all time. Late in the fourth, where we were trying to kill clock, we were able to add insult to injury, getting another score, as we would beat the Wolverines in a high-scoring affair, as we would end up throwing for almost 600 yards and 6 touchdowns in that game. We were traveling away to Northwestern for a snowy game, and that must have been giving us some problems as we were down by 3 in the fourth quarter to open it up. Even though our team was overall really good, our defense had been giving up a lot of points recently, leading to teams being in every single game that we were playing, which is why even after I got that scramble touchdown on that last drive, we were still down by 3 points with 50 seconds left, and this would be the first time all season that we were in this type of scenario where we need to drive down the field and get a score to win the game. Thankfully for me though, my receivers were making great plays, and after our running back was able to punch it in, getting us the lead, as long as our defense was able to get a stop here with time expiring, which they were able to do, we would end up winning the game by a close 4-point victory. We're looking to have a better performance in our game against the Cornhuskers next week. Looking into the second half, we were only up by 7 points as our defense has still been giving up over 20 points a game. Our defense would probably give up a lot of points each game because our offense was high scoring, but our scoring ability was a large part in our victory every single week. Going into our last game of the season, I was currently sitting at number 1 on the Heisman watch, and Purdue would be trying to play spoiler going into our last game. We'd find ourselves only up by 6 late in the first half, and I was able to thread the needle over the linebacker's head, getting our receiver open. And with only 30 seconds left in the first half, on the very next play, Liam Clifford was able to make a big play with a huge block, and he was able to get all the way down and get a score. From there, our offense would click on all cylinders as our defense didn't give up a single point, and we were throwing it over the top like we do. And after putting up another stellar performance, we would have a dominating win to have a 12-0 record. I would finish the season with over 4,000 passing yards and over 40 touchdowns, so that meant that we completed every challenge and we were able to mark that off our goal list. It was now time for the Big Ten Championship against Iowa, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if we completed every goal on our goal list, we'd be able to be drafted, but if we didn't, our quarterback would be forced to go back to college for another year. So with things going the way that they have been throughout the entirety of the season, we were looking to complete every goal on the rest of the sheet, and now it all started here with us needing to get a win so that we can make the playoffs. Late in the third quarter, we were able to throw the ball up to somebody not named Harrison Wallace as we found Caden Saunders on the left side, and he was able to outrun his defender on the way to a score. As always, our offense finally turned the switch on as we had 35 points and we were able to add to our lead. That would lead to a dominating Big Ten Championship victory, and this team was looking unstoppable throughout the entirety of this season thus far. And I had never been more frustrated in all of my time in NCAA football as we had somehow lost the Heisman votes to a running back who only had 1,000 rushing yards. I seriously cannot believe that us having close to 5,500 passing yards and 62 passing touchdowns wasn't enough to win the Heisman. This meant that going into our first round against Alabama, I was going to be looking to absolutely destroy them. Our defense would give up first blood as Bama would score on their very first possession, and I was looking to score back, so I ended up throwing the ball, making a terrible read, but it worked out. And I was going to be playing risky this entire game as I was extremely fed up that I lost the Heisman, so I threw it up to Harris on the right side, and he was able to make a big play, of course, getting another score. I wanted to prove to every single Heisman voter that they made a terrible choice in picking the Utah running back, as I was absolutely throwing the brakes off of Alabama's defense. I had the Cobra Kai mentality as I was showing no mercy throughout the entirety of this game as I was throwing it up every single possession that I possibly could, getting a score. And to add insult to my own injury, I ended up breaking the NCAA passing yards record for a season. It wasn't even halftime yet, and we were going to be going into it with 42 points, so we got another touchdown right here. And from there, we'd go on to absolutely destroy the Crimson Tide, and what would be a game where we scored 59 points as we were looking to play Notre Dame in the championship game. Losing the Heisman was all the motivation I needed to destroy every single team in my path, and Nick Singleton was able to make a big play on 3rd and 4th here, and I felt sorry for every single team that stood in our way for the rest of this point. Our offense was putting up up better numbers in one season than most teams do in several years, as we were getting another huge play to Wallace III on the left side for another big play touchdown. We were only up by 7 points late in the first quarter, so I wanted to make sure we kept adding more points to our lead, as I was able to roll it to the right side, adding a little bit more. And in the third quarter, with us being up by 11 points, I found Wallace on the right side, and he was able to, of course, catch the ball, and you know what he's going to do for the rest of this point. I would kick the man while he's down, getting another touchdown in the fourth quarter, leading to me having an absolutely stellar performance in what was one of the biggest victories in college football playoff history. And these are how all of our stats looked from each of our 3 seasons playing in college. Tell me how a guy with 75 touchdowns doesn't win the Heisman. Can you tell I'm a little salty? After declaring early and not playing my senior season, I would end up being taken with the #1 overall pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you thought this was interesting, check out another road to glory controlled by a wheel by clicking on the screen here.